Yeah, focusing on spin out.
Spin out. So how do you, if you've got an existing company
Yep.
and you're doing services, and we talked about how you can grow in different ways, horizontal growth, vertical growth, and that one opportunity for a service company is to develop a product that allows them to scale at a much faster rate, because a product allows you to increase revenue and not necessarily increase your expenses at the same rate, whereas services businesses, that happens a lot.
It's hard to scale in the services businesses. You got to hire people. It's still trading dollars for hours, and that
100%.
becomes hard. So this concept, super exciting.
Yeah, we're talking all about how do you go through, and we've got 10 steps to basically looking at how you create a spin out. Last episode, we really talked about some ways that you can find ideas for products within your existing services business. And then this week, we're talking a little bit about how you can vet those ideas to understand which ones should really be truly evaluated in a deeper way to move forward.
Yeah, because everybody has ideas, but everyone's got ideas, but the vetting process is really important to figure out which are the ones, prioritizing which are the ones that really make sense. Is there really a demand for that? Is there a need? Is there a hungry audience that would go after it, right?
Exactly.
And so understanding what's out there, we're going to give you some ways that you could do that, some different things to think about that'll help you with the vetting process.
Yeah, and so we've got 6 different things that we evaluate, and this isn't all of them. I've actually got a couple others that I sometimes add on, and I'll hint at those later. But the way that I've done this with other companies in the past is really creating a grid. You can as easily go into an Excel sheet and basically say, here are some of these ideas that we have, or products that we want to create, and across that you put all of these different factors, as well as a couple more of the ones that I've talked about or ones that you come up with, and score it. Say 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, score them. Maybe put a couple notes with why you scored it. And then I actually, in that Excel file, even color code things. I love to put green when it's positive and red when it's negative. And you have this,
or the yellows.
and so you have this great sheet that can look at product ideas and very quickly get a sense of, okay, what's the level of viability for this for me to be successful. And again, if we're in this market where we're a service business, we're looking to create a scalable product. Maybe we had an existing idea, but like last week, we wanted to augment additional ideas just to make sure that we were being thorough. So we augmented some ideas, and we've got a couple different products that we think we can spin out into the market. This is our way to do that evaluation.
Ideas are great, but they can be a constraint because some people don't have enough ideas. Other people have too many, and in either case, you hit a point where it stalls the progress of actually getting something to market. So by the vetting process, having a vetting process, having the grid and the scoring and all that, that's going to allow you to prioritize and say, okay, let's get rid of these 2. I thought they were great ideas, but obviously there's no need for them. There's no demand. Let's focus on these ones here at the top. Figure out what makes most sense or variations of that.
And you said people that have too many ideas or 0 ideas. There is also a negative to having 1 idea. And I've seen that is that, and not that it's a huge problem, but I watch service businesses that come to us and they've got that 1 idea they've had for 5 years, and that's good. But I believe, and the reason that we started with finding ideas and vetting them is, even if you've got that 1 great idea that's been spinning around in your head for 5 years, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be thorough prior to actually investing in the development and marketing and growth of a product. And so, even though you've got that great idea, I still think you should step back and follow this entire process throughout this. So let's dive into a couple of these things that we use to vet different product ideas. So vetting, investigate to discover. So the first one that we really want to measure is opportunity. What's the size of the market? And this often comes with a little bit of market research. If we're going out and we're saying that we're trying to reach insurance companies, then really what we want to do is maybe get a sense of, okay, within the US, this is how many insurance companies there are, this is the ones at these different sizes, and basically really understand what's the opportunity and size of the market.
Let's keep rolling.
Okay. So we really want to be able to understand what is that market size, and we want to use data that we can find to research that. And a lot of organizations do that because then they're able to say, okay, well, even if we can capture 10% of this $2 billion market, this is where we can get to with it. So it's a common thing, but that's really a great first step. Is if you're looking at multiple ideas, is there any difference in the opportunity for the market for it?
Very good.
The next one is really demand. Is this a need or want, and how hungry is the audience? At the end of the day, there are a lot of products out there that are nice to haves. It's not necessary for my daily life. It's not really significantly changing what I do or providing some great value, versus needs where, once I have this, it's a pillar of the way that I either run my business or handle my life. And so we really have to evaluate, is it a need or a want? Yeah. And demand is just that level, like, are people really hungry for it? Sometimes even if it's a want, that doesn't mean that the audience that's out there knows about it and is hungry to get something that does this. I think one of the biggest parts of demand is being honest with ourselves. When we come up with an idea, and I see this with business owners and founders and people that have product ideas, is that we can overinflate the demand because it's our idea. Maybe we have the problem and it solves something we want. And so we put our own biases on what a true market demand is. And I think this is a place to, one, be very honest and get some outside opinions and be open to the honesty about the level of hunger and need and demand for it.
And using things like market research, third party, just any information. Because again, to that point, it's easy to get excited, let the emotion get the best of us, and then we're inflating some numbers because we're excited about it. So that's a good one to consider.
Yeah. The next one is really competition. So how many alternatives are there out in the marketplace? And I use the word alternatives really specifically because it's not just people that might have a similar product or something that's going to compete against you, but it's also something that someone can choose instead.
Yeah.
And so really you want to look at all of those different breadths and how much are out there, and then for each of those competitors or alternatives, what market share do they already have of what you're looking at potentially reaching.
Yeah, I think it goes a little bit ties into the demand, because sometimes competition, to your point, it's alternative. So if there's an audience that's completely starving for a particular product, that's pretty good. If it's very laser focused on a certain delivery mechanism or whatever the product is, but if it's something where people aren't that, they just need to get from here to work, and I can walk, I can ride a bike, or I can I can drive a car. So if you're saying, well, this model is in the same class as this other model, and I'm saying I don't really care. I just need to get there. So it may not look like a competitor. So alternatives and competitors, and understanding how burning is the desire for the product.
Well, and this plays into one of my favorite concepts and looks across opportunity and demand is blue ocean strategy. How do you reduce competition? A red ocean has a ton of blood in the water because there's so much competition, and how do you find a blue ocean? And so, there's an opportunity within our product ideas that if there is a lot of competition, are we just not evaluating the uniqueness and the specialization of the product that we're offering and making it different enough that maybe our market changes, the size reduces, but the competition also reduces with that as well, giving us greater opportunity to actually capture that market.
Yeah, I've heard it said being called create a category of one.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can put enough different things together, package things in a way that you're the only one that can do these three things.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe others can do 1 and 2, others can do 3, but nobody can do all the 3 things. So when you can create a category of 1,
yeah, I like that.
Incredibly powerful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So that gets into kind of the next one, uniqueness. And we just kind of talked about that, creating a category of 1, understanding the level of competition and potentially reducing it. But one of the things we want to evaluate is how unique is it? Yeah. And so, in this evaluation process, if we're seeing a product idea as a really low level of uniqueness and a high level of competition, maybe that doesn't even take it off the list, but forces us to look into the product idea and try and develop that category of 1 and really look at, what features or how can we adjust the idea a little bit to create more uniqueness, blue ocean, and reduce that competition. But that's one that we want to evaluate, and that tells us whether we should really either get rid of the concept or completely change it to come up with something better.
For sure.
The next one, obviously, effort and cost. So, we want to evaluate from a 1 to 10, in my mind, of how much effort and cost is it going to take. If you're building something, for the banking industry and, it's going to integrate into multiple departments, and that the cost and the red tape and the effort to get it out there and the sales team that you're going to need to build versus, again, maybe a product that has, is a lot smaller in scope, potentially doesn't need as much security or integrations or whatever it is, it's a lot easier. That may play into this whole equation as well, as how hard is it to get out there.
I think it's important to be realistic about cost. I'm gonna do it. We talked to somebody this week.
Yeah.
And we asked them about what's their budget, because we have to understand if they're gonna hire us, that we got to be considerate of what do they have, what can they work with. And they were like, no, we're funded. If it's gonna take $5,000 for us to get 500 customers, we can do that.
Yeah.
We're kind of like, okay,
that's the wrong thing.
That's not, so.
It's not enough. Well, that's what I typically see people miss, is that, in the beginning, they're so focused on creating the product that they don't truly think of what the real effort and cost is of acquiring users.
What really goes into that?
Yeah.
A lot of times we underestimate, so.
Well, and that gets back to even some of the other criteria that demand. If we have put our own biases on it and we think that demand's a 10 and the reality that the demand is a 3, that effort and cost to actually acquire users is going to be way more than we think.
Yep.
And so that goes back to this demand piece, is that you have to be realistic with yourself, because you're nothing is really a 10. No one has to have something unless it's food or shelter.
Yeah.
And so where are you realistically in the level of demand? And if that level of demand, the lower it goes, a lot of times to do user acquisition, there's going to be a lot more effort and cost. And so not being delusional in your demand can really help you be more realistic in your effort and cost.
And I mentioned, and you're saying effort and cost. A lot of times I think people think, well, we can, bootstrap it and we won't need to spend as much. But that means you're going to have to do a lot of work. And that when you have that idea and you're excited about it, might sound like you're willing to do, but can you get enough done? Can you do the right things? Do you have
especially
expertise?
If you have an existing services business. We're talking about people spinning out of a service company.
And you got to...
Yeah, if you need 40 billable hours a week,
Yeah.
and you're saying we want to develop this great product, so you really do have to think about that. And so one way or another, it's a cost. It's either my billable hours $200 an hour, and I'm going to have to put 10 hours a week into this, versus I outsource the work to help me market it. I mean, one way there's a cost or another. It's not free just because it's effort.
That's actually a smart way to budget it. If you have billable hours and you're going to be spending 6 hours every week on product development, then put that aside just so that you can track. There's some tangibles behind it. And you understand that it's not like, oh yeah, we can do this, right?
Yeah.
Put some definition on that stuff, because I'm sounding a little bit negative here today, but I think just being realistic about this stuff. Otherwise, you're not going to get to the point of being able to launch this thing, which is so exciting. We want you to get there. So,
well, I think this process of vetting is a little bit like being realistic and kind of being critical of things.
You gotta be.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the other things with cost that I've helped, business owners look at is you have the cost of your time and creating blogs and doing these things, but also effectiveness. Can you spend 10 hours to try and build a page for a website that you could outsource to someone that really knows what they're doing in an hour? Or you're spending a bunch of time, but if you bring in somebody that really knows the market or how to do this, that they're able to do it 10 times more efficiently. And so there is something to that idea of we want to evaluate our cost, and if we want to bootstrap it internally, even with our own staff, but what is the true effectiveness of that? If I'm in a service business and I'm an assistant, and I say, well, you're going to do all the social media and the marketing and content creation for this new product, but that person doesn't have the knowledge and expertise, it may take them 40 hours a week for what it might take an expert 2 hours a week to do.
Yeah, for sure.
And that just doesn't add up, even though the hourly cost of that internal person seems less.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to evaluate there. And then the final one that we want to really look at is what's our return? So what kind of profit can we bring out of it? Every product, when we look at that effort and cost, what's it going to take to build it, to market it, to maintain it, to support it, and after all those costs, what is the market willing to bear based off of opportunity, demand, and competitiveness?
Yeah.
So they're able to bear a certain price. And so then what's obviously our delta, which is our profit. And then the other thing that I really want to evaluate kind of with that, and you can either do it within the same profit and then exitability. I've separated them at times, but not just profit, but what is the likelihood that I can go through an acquisition event and bring return not only to myself, but potentially if I have investors or other partners in the business. And so at times I put those together as let's evaluate the number of profit and then exitability, because they can be different. But I really think that's a huge part of the equation for that.
Yeah, got to get those numbers right.
Yeah, and so these 6 factors, I think if you can evaluate them right, you can be honest like we've talked about, and really look at it. This gives you a solid idea of the different product ideas and really what the right thing might be.
Yeah.
I mentioned a couple other things. Sometimes I put passion in there as another one. Is this product idea something that the person has a 1 to 10 passion level on? Even if I'm in a service business, maybe I'm really passionate about data visualization and being able to bring something like that to my market, but I'm not passionate about document storage and helping people just keep track of their documents. On one side, I'm really passionate about data visualization because I think, wow, I can really improve what's going on, and it's game changer in this. But then this product idea, it's kind of like, oh, well, that'd be cool, but it's not the end all be all.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. We just had a conversation with the prospect that are looking to put an app out there, and that came up, right? The passion behind that.
Right.
Because that's an important consideration when we're choosing to work with someone. If they're passionate, that says a lot. And if you think about it, if you're just driven by saying, oh, this could make me money, that's exciting up front, but it's not lasting, especially when the heavy stuff, the challenges, the hard work, then it goes out the window because people don't want to do it anymore. But when someone's passionate about something, it keeps us driving forward because there's a bigger picture want and desire to see it through. And so there's a lot to that. I totally agree with that.
So I kind of like adding that as my 7th one. And, and then in your own process, there may be things that you want to evaluate. What's your level of expertise for it? Is sometimes one that I'll add is, do I know if I'm an accounting firm and I'm looking at document storage versus data analytics, how much do I know about those 2 different industries? And so, again, we want to create this Excel sheet and look at things, like we said, just to review: opportunity, demand, competition, uniqueness, effort and cost, return, passion and experience, and other things. But this gives us a logical way to put it out on a grid, put some numbers in there, give them reason, and then my favorite, color code them so that I can really see what it all looks like.
And then you have an idea if you have something that's potentially valid, that's a legitimate product to pursue development and put out, be able to scale and grow. But you got to start there. It can't just be the idea and go. It's
100%.
This vetting process is really important.
Yep. So that's our episode on vetting. We're doing this spin out show. Just to recap, for service businesses, existing companies that want to create a product to drive scale in their business, we're going through the 10 steps of how you basically, drive into developing a spin out product. Number one episode, we really talked about, or the number one principle, finding ideas. Now we talked about vetting them. Next week, we're going to be talking about the dictionary. No, I'm kidding. I messed up. So what are we talking about next week? We are talking about market landscape deep dive. So kind of that opportunity space.
Yeah, where do you fit?
Yeah, how do we really dive into the market opportunity, understanding our audience, different things like that. That's kind of the next stage in really vetting out and going through this process. And it'll lead into developing features and roadmap, because when we understand the market better, it helps us determine what are the right features that we need to be developing.
And if you're following along, we've been picking up, more people are tuning in and watching this series live in particular. If you are watching this, take notes, go through the exercises. We'd love to get some feedback. Yeah. We can, talk about it here out live 100%. Or just between, us and you. We'd love to hear what you're doing, but go through. We're going through this process in a step-by-step manner. And I know a lot of people have the ideas, but this is the hard stuff that we're getting into. So.
Yeah, and it only goes up from there. If you're going to spin out a product, ideas, that first stage goes past very quick.
Yeah.
And even evaluating it, and then we're going to get into how do you develop the roadmap and the features, and how do you market it, and how do you brand it, and how do you support it, all these things that, a lot of times when we talk to people, a lot of stuff that they're not even thinking about, because they're focused on the idea and what it could do, and not all the stuff that it really takes to create and spin out a product.
The other side of that is those people are typically, even though they're excited, they're also overwhelmed.
Right.
So a positive in today's episode is that, when you have structure and you have some guidance, it's not that overwhelming. Agreed. If you know what to do and you know the steps, follow along, follow the steps, and it helps you through the process.
Yeah, I agree. So join us next Friday for the next episode in Spin Out. Check out our last couple of episodes, and even potentially go back to our previous series, which was all about brand strategy and how you develop differentiation in the marketplace for growth. And so, check out these shows. They're pretty fun, and I guess we'll see everybody next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend, and see you next time.
Awesome, Tony. Thanks.
Thank you.